I'm going to spend some time on a problem which I will call government intervention in the market. Suppose you have an industry with 4 equally sized players. So we have firm 1, 2, 3, and 4, each with 25% of the industry. Our government wants to understand, using a formula, when a merger should be allowed and when a merger should be disallowed. Before 1890, there was no idea of blocking firms from merging, but after we passed the Sherman Antitrust Act suggesting that we will not allow monopoly, the government had to come up with a metric, a way of measuring whether a merger should be allowed or disallowed. By the way, the individuals who came up with this particular formula or index, their names are Herfindahl and Hirschman, 2 economists. And the index is called, guess what? The Herfindahl-Hirschman Index. So what they suggest is that you take the share that each firm has, take the share as a whole number, 25% would be 25, and square each firm's share, and then sum these squared shares. You come up with the number that is represented via the HHI. So the HHI is the sum for all the players of all the shares that each firm has squared. XI on X is your share of the industry. And in this particular example, XI on X is 25 or 25% for each firm. So we have 25 squared plus 25 squared plus 25 squared plus 25 squared. 25 squared is 625. There are 4 of these. So the HHI originally is 625 times 4 equals 2500. We're going to allow 2 of these 4 firms to merge so that the new firm that is created will own 50% of the market. There will now be 3 firms, one 50% of the market, and the other 2 are 25% of the market each. For the new HHI, we're going to square the shares, so we have 50 squared plus 25 squared plus 25 squared. 50 squared is 2500. And 25 squared is 625. So we have 625 twice, which is 1250. So the HHI is 2500 plus 1250, which is 3750. Let me recap the story that we're telling. Suppose there are 4 equal-sized firms in the industry, and 2 of these firms merge. The formula says take the share of each firm, square it, and sum these squared shares. So originally we had 4 times 25 squared, or 4 times 625, which was 2500. With 2 of the firms merging, the new firm would be 50% of the market. So by itself, this one new firm will yield an index value of 2500, which is the level that the entire industry held before the merger. It should be clear, therefore, that the 2 remaining firms will cause the index to have a value of 3750, or the index will rise by 1250. So we say the change in the HHI is 1250. The original HHI is 2500. The new HHI is 3750. So what is the benchmark that Herfindahl and Hirschman came up with? There are 2 important benchmarks on the scale, an HHI of 1000 and an HHI of 1800. The government should not object to mergers when the index value is below 1000. The government should certainly object to mergers for any value starting above 1800. Herfindahl and Hirschman, though, did not just want to go with the original level of the index. They also wanted to bring in a second dimension. By how much will the merger cause the index to change? So for an index value starting above 1800, if the merger causes the HHI to rise by more than 50 points, then this is considered to be a case that should be monitored or certainly challenged by the Department of Justice. The industry is considered to be concentrated, and the change in the HHI over 50 suggests that the merger will certainly make the industry more concentrated. Certainly, any merger will make the industry more concentrated, but the threshold there suggests that a large firm could merge with a small firm, or two small firms could merge, but a large firm could not merge with a large firm. In practice, that is what the index is saying. In the Department of Justice, there's a department called the Federal Trade Commission. And within the Federal Trade Commission, one of the departments is called the Antitrust Division. The Antitrust Division should be looking out for citizens whenever firms want to merge. Whenever firms want to merge, they have to apply to the courts for permission to merge. And the Antitrust Division is the watchdog that will bring a case against the merger on your behalf. Remember, we concluded that if firms are allowed to merge, this monopolizing behavior will cause prices to rise and quantity demanded to decline, so that less will be supplied as well. So it's against the consumer's interest to allow this monopolizing type behavior. I'm going to do one more example with the low number of 1,000 to give you a sense as to how that applies, just to show you where 1,000 is falling in this arithmetic. Here's the example. Suppose there are 10 equal-sized firms in an industry. Each firm has 10% of the market. Remember, we square the shares and then we sum. So we're going to square each of the 10s and get 100 10 times. So the HHI is going to be 1,000. The rule is that if the HHI exceeds 1,000 and the change in the HHI is 200, then the DOJ's Antitrust Division prepares a case to block the merger. So let's ask, if two of these firms were to merge, by how much will the HHI change? We have 8 firms, 10% each, so their values to the HHI are 108 times, which is 800. And the newly merged firm is 20% of the market. 20 squared is 400. So we have 400 plus 800 equals 1,200. So the merger will cause the index to rise by 200 points. The index starts out at 1,000 and rises by 200 points. This would be the easiest case of where the government should consider doing something on behalf of consumers. An industry with an HHI of 1,000 is considered to be moderately concentrated. Anything between 1,000 and 1,800, the government is kind of making up its mind whether or not it considers the industry to be sufficiently concentrated for the case to be actually heard. So this is the lowest level at which government would consider getting involved. If there are more than 10 firms, the government probably will not be as interested. If there are 11 equally sized firms, the government probably would not get involved. If the DOJ's Antitrust Division brings a case against the firms merging, the government does not always win the case. So I should inform you that frequently the government does not object, even though the index suggests they should get involved, the government might not actually do anything. Here's an analogy. If you are exceeding the speed limit, and the police uses a radar gun to determine this, then legally you deserve to get a ticket. But frequently no ticket is issued because the police officer is looking for a bigger fish. They're trying to catch someone who is speeding more, and they let you go because it's a small infraction. So the government doesn't always object to the merger, the same way the cop might not always come after you. So frequently, firms apply to merge, and the government does not do anything to block the merger. But we know that when the merger occurs, the price will generally go up. In reality, the government is overwhelmed with the number of potential cases, and because it doesn't always look like the government can win the case, if the authorities think that the judge will not side with the government, then frequently they will decide not to bring the case. Some more examples. You're probably aware that 6 of the major airlines have had mergers, so that we now have 3 large companies. Northwest merged with Delta, Continental merged with United, and US Airways merged with American Airlines. We're going to look at the index value in the airline industry and see that the number is much higher than numbers we've worked with, which suggests that the government does ask for these mergers to be blocked, but the judge frequently might decide to use a different judgment and not block the merger. In the case of the airlines, here's an example. When American Airlines asked for permission to merge with US Airways, the judge hinted that he might allow the merger, but he asked the American Airlines authorities to talk to the guys at the DOJ about a compromise and then come back to him. So American offered to give up some gates at airports where they thought that they would have a monopoly, and that compromise was satisfactory to the antitrust division, and when they came back to the judge, they announced that they had agreed that American, where it had the opportunity to monopolize some small airports, would actually give up some of the gates to a competing airline, and that made the judge happy. That satisfied the judge, I should say.